So much shit is getting thrown at property investors right now. It's like the government is doing their best to shut us down. And the latest one is the abolishment of Section 21. What is it? What does it mean? And how is it going to impact us? So Section 21 has been around since the Housing Act of 1980, and what it essentially means is that you can give a no-fault eviction, i.e. the tenant doesn't need to do anything and you can give them 2 months notice in order to move out of your property. And this is perceived in the landlord area as something that's going to break down property. Buy-to-let is dead again, and actually this is really painful. Is it really that bad? This has come about because of the Renters Reform Bill. Essentially, the Section 21 is no more. It is going to be abolished. And this brings about quite a lot of unease, because what if you want to get the tenant out in the first place? The first thing we need to understand is, what's the aim of this? Why is the government doing this? Just to fuck us over one more time, right? Well, not quite. Actually, it's to protect tenants. Now, I know in England it can feel like it's always about protecting the tenants, but is that actually a bad thing? Like, why would you have a problem if the tenant hasn't done anything and there's no true reason? Is it really that bad of a thing, not kicking somebody out of their home just for the sake of doing it? I don't think so. It's kind of linked in with the decent home standards, and this was introduced really to improve the average property rented out on a buy-to-let basis. You might not know this, but 12% of buy-to-let out there are in breach of the Health and Safety Act, which is crazy when you think how bad that actually has to be. And this is in order to bring up that standard in the first place. So my gut reaction is, actually, if you're a great landlord, this is going to be actually quite good for you. And I'll talk about the impact of that on the plus side. And if you're a shit landlord, you're probably not watching this channel, to be fair, but it's actually going to negatively impact them. But overall, it will improve the rental market. Now, let me break that down, because there's a lot of different parts in that. First of all, does it mean you cannot kick out a tenant? No. The Section 21 is about no-fault evictions. And what this means is that you can still kick out a tenant if they're not paying, or they are trashing your property, or indeed you're looking to sell the property, or you want to move into the property. The only thing this is doing to protect tenants is those landlords that are just like, I don't like this tenant, I want them out. But otherwise, you're not looking to use the property, you're not looking to sell the property, you're getting the rent for the property, and they're looking after the property like their home. So really, why would you like to have a world where we can be prejudiced against people that are renting the property as their home? I'm sure that most of you watching this don't and are not in this party, but there is a lot of political non-integrity. There's a lot of racism that goes on, sexism that goes on, that you probably don't even think about, because why would it come into the average person's mind? It certainly doesn't come into mine. But ultimately, this is protecting those people. Now, the government, when they make changes like this, often it's in the small print, but largely they're trying to create a situation that is symbiotic, a bit of balance. It can feel like constantly it's over this way and just fuck you, landlords. But actually, there are some positives. For example, non-payers. Up until now, it could take up to 12 months. 12 months to kick out a tenant that hasn't been paying you. And this is because of, I'm not going to mention the names of some services out there because otherwise they're great, but actually advise people on how to be strategic and not get kicked out of the home, ultimately to stop homelessness, right? But actually, that will be gone. If a tenant now falls behind 2 months in a row in payments, it is a mandatory thing to issue a Section 8 notice and get the tenant out of your property. This is a great thing to protect landlords moving forward. The other thing it's going to be great for is if you want to sell the property or indeed move into the property. Now, why would you want to do that? Personally, I will never sell any of my buy-to-lets unless I get a redonkulous offer, but ultimately I'm looking to retire at death. Okay, and most of you watching this, including you, are probably wanting to do the same, maybe hand it down to your kids or give it to somebody else, whatever it is. But things change, situations come up. You know, what if something happened outside of that and you needed to move in the property? Well, actually, the reform that's coming in will make it easier to do that, as long as you are involving local letting agents to help repatriate or rehome these tenants. So you're actually doing the decent thing, but it's going to get a lot easier for you to sell on a property without a tenant, or indeed move into the property if that's something you want to do. Another thing to consider is you will no longer, and it's crazy that you could do this, by the way, say no to families and DSS tenants or LHA tenants. So families, it's like, come on, like that, why would, that's insane anyway. Like, why would you say no to a family? I understand if they've got huge dogs and things like that, but in general, it's just ridiculous that we ever were able to do that. DSS and LHA tenants, I kind of can understand. I genuinely can understand that. But the reason why is we all know some of the LHA, DSS tenants that trash the house, don't pay and stuff like that. I get it, I really do. I've had tenants like that in the past. But in general, that's just not the case. It's a bit prejudiced to assume that about every single person. I know people where some of the best renters that I've had for years now are LHA tenants or DSS. It's local housing authority, by the way, or local housing allowance. And so it could be a man or woman that's just split up from a divorce, or maybe they've just lost their job and they need to go on benefits. You don't know, that could happen to you in the future. It could happen to me, could happen to anyone, right? And actually, just because somebody is needing to rely on the state or the government or taxpayers' money for a little bit, doesn't mean that they are lesser in any way, or they've got a lower ability in order to rent from you. The other thing to be thinking about is, I'm not saying it's good or a bad thing, but naturally, if you are a private landlord, your rents are likely to be in a better demographic than the lowest rental points. And local housing authority or the allowance is based on those lower points. And so unless somebody's in a financial position to top that money up in the first place, then they're not going to be able to rent to you. But actually, I think protecting people in that way and not just going, oh, you claim benefits, you can only have property here, is actually a shitty thing to be doing as landlords and as a country anyway. And I personally am absolutely fine with that change to protect the tenants and protect their situation. Something else that is coming into play for this, which I think is brilliant, by the way, is a new landlord portal. So the government's kind of going through the details of this. And by the way, we can have input into what we would like to see, but it's going to be great for both landlords and tenants. So a real shit thing that's not available right now is blacklisting or credit checking or some sort of referencing like that towards tenants. And what this has meant for landlords is that tenants could go, not pay for ages, trash the property, and there is no paper trace of this anywhere unless it's registered with some organization that none of us are part of, right? So there's nothing on their credit file. There's nothing that goes against the rental charges, nothing like that. So there's no evidence of it. The only thing is if somebody goes, I'd like to talk to a prior landlord, which hardly anyone does that. And so because there's no trace, there's no accountability to this. Likewise, if you're a shit landlord and actually there's just some genuine problems with the property like mold and stuff, again, 12% of the buy-to-lets out there are in that state where there's health and safety concerns. Not saying you or I, but there are those out there. There's no reporting structure in place. And so the shit landlords can carry on being shit and the shit tenants can carry on being shit. And that's where this environment of, oh, I'm a landlord, I hate tenants, they're absolutely useless. And then tenants hate their landlords because actually they're paying money and getting a shit property and it's barely a roof over their head. That can start to stop, where actually the bad do get weeded out. Now, naturally, that everyone's going to have their voice, but what a great opportunity as a landlord to be able to see on a portal that actually this tenant has got a history of trashing properties and not paying, and for a tenant's protection to understand that actually this is a landlord that looks after tenants, sees them as customers, trying to make their house a home for somebody, and actually this symbiotic relationship can grow. So what do I think this means? Well, I actually think it's an amazing opportunity to get out shit landlords. I think there's going to be stock coming onto the market that really does need work to bring it up to standard, which is a great opportunity for us. And for the good landlords that are there, honestly, it's not going to be great for tenants overall. The cost of living is going up, but actually supply versus demand, the supply will be reduced again. The demand is still increasing and naturally prices will go up. So if you're a decent landlord, you're looking after your tenants, you're looking after the property, I would expect rentals to be increasing between 10 and 15% within 12 months of this reform coming into play. But hey, that's just my opinion and I'm actually interested in yours. So let me know what you think of the reform. What have I missed out? What questions have you got? And I'll do future videos. Let me know in the comments. What do you think? A good thing or a bad thing? If you're new to the channel and you want to find out more about property investment, hit the subscribe and the notification bell, and I'll see you in the next video.